beautiful day here in Israel. And it is a wonderful day.
What's the weather like there? Sun?
Gorgeous. I was in Tel Aviv today and it was, I don't know, around 20, 22 degrees. Beautiful, sunny.
You were in hedonistic Tel Aviv, Avi?
I tell you, once in a while, I have to go there to see how the rest of Israel is living. And let me tell you something. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Not too bad.
Amazing.
Not too bad in the Spring Hill, is it, Avi?
Unbelievable. Every time I go there, a new skyscraper, more beautiful than the next. And, you know, people are all over the place and the activities and things going on. Amazing what we've done with this little country. I'll tell you that much.
Tell you what, you're absolutely right. We have Marcel and Marilla watching. Hello, Happy New Year, Marcel and Marilla. Two of our favorite people.
Absolutely.
Saul Schachter, pre-snowstorm. We've changed positions. Have we changed positions? Or are we usually on the opposite side? I don't know. I think that's dependent on your computer, Saul. We are on our own laptops, so not sure how that works. We have a very special guest today that we'll get to in a little while. Alicja Zioło, who is a wonderful tour guide here in Krakow and has done some really cool projects besides tour guiding, and has a lot of good stuff that we'll deal with her. So Happy New Year, Rabbi Avi. Happy Goy, as I like to say, Happy Goyish New Year.
Goyish New Year. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I want to talk about one thing that happened. It's a little sad in Israel today, but it's also a time to celebrate the life of one individual who represents, who just passed away today. And he wrote basically every Israeli song that you ever remember that was connected to the homeland. His name is Yoram Tahar Lev. So if you Google him, you'll see that he's 85 years old, and he wrote songs such as Hora. Do you remember Hora? Ha-hora, ahi-mahe. It was on Eurovision. Or songs like Kum hitalech ba'aretz le'argo le'rachba. No, nothing.
Keep going. Keep doing it.
Bar abba or balalaika.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
And Bim Bam Bam and Givata Tachmoshet. You know that song, Givata Tachmoshet?
Givata Tachmoshet.
Sorry, I didn't go there first.
You should have started with Givata Tachmoshet.
He wrote that song, and he wrote also.
Givata Tachmoshet.
He wrote Shir Yoner. What's it like to be a Shir Yoner? In other words, he wrote these songs that are iconic, that were sung by all the great singers in Israel, and he passed away. And it's just a time for us to remember the great artists and the creators and the people who really shaped what Israel was before Israel became the startup nation and everyone trying to make their $1 billion. It really was a place with shared values and joint sacrifice. You remember those days?
I do. I lived on a kibbutz, which was very much in line with the socialist principles of the founding of the secular socialist principles of the founding of the state of Israel, the secular socialist Israel that I love.
And it's kind of the kibbutz movement is on its way out. Very few have remained in place, being replaced by those skyscrapers in Tel Aviv. So there's a bit lost, and it's felt, I think, in the army, and it's felt in the rift, in the schism that's in Israel as well. And it's something that people, lament. We need to try to find a way to reconnect people with the values and the ideals of what it meant to move here and to fight for this country and to live in this country, right?
I think, no doubt. For me, one of the big, the idea of social cohesion was much easier in a country that didn't have so much money, and it was, then the highest value was defending the country and giving back to the country and being the best thing that you did. The surest path to a high position in society was being a pilot or doing the most, being a commando or a fighter and doing these things that are service, right? The more service, the more you give. Right. And that's really that's really changed. And Israel has become, I think, a lot less like Israel, or a lot less like it used to be, and has become nothing wrong with it. It grows up and it's become a normal country. And
It's
maybe
called being a victim of your success.
it's called being a victim of your own success, and that's what you go for. And you can't help but success and safety and comfort do make you a little complacent, and the values change. And in a country that doesn't see itself in existential threat, with an existential threat the way that it does, I'm not saying it has or it doesn't have, but doesn't see itself that way as it used to, then it becomes like everywhere else, where we worship money and fame, and not only somebody say, oh, what he did in the army and he was in Sayeret Matkal or something. It becomes, oh, he sold his startup to Google, and which is, I guess, what the state has been going in this direction. I'm just, for me,
Listen.
I'm happy I lived there and in a place and at a time when it was before this a little bit.
Listen, the other side is that Israel raised $26 billion in funds for their tech industry and the startup, and companies are moving there, and it's really it allows Israel to become a leader and to go out and to help out other countries and do humanitarian things, even though the press doesn't talk about that much. So there is that aspect, but I'm not sure if the average Israeli kid is thinking about fame like the average American kid is thinking about becoming LeBron. I think the average Israeli kid, I think, is thinking about how he's going to make his exit, and that's really sad.
Fame, but I think that the focus on money is very different than it was before.
Yeah.
Right.
We got our work cut out for us.
But yeah, anyway, that's natural. So we skipped a couple of weeks. We had Christmas and New Year's here. I was up in Warsaw, had a nice time, hanging out with the family.
We had none of that here. That's still the beauty of Israel, that even though there are like 1 million Russians, but there's this big discussion about Novi God.
Right.
But
Russian Christmas.
Russian Christmas, right? And it's kind of making its ways. Listen, with 1 million people, it's kind of hard to ignore them, and which is one of the major debates. There's a huge debate in the government with the ultra-Orthodox about conversion reform. Conversion reform is number 1 or 2 on the agenda, and the reason is because Prime Minister Bennett and his has a minister of religion. His name is Matan Kahana, who's like the most modern Orthodox religious Zionist kind of guy. He was in Sayeret Matkal, and he was in the Air Force, and he went to the yeshiva, and he did all these things, and he's a normal looking guy. And he says, we're changing everything because you guys in the Haredi Rabbanut have had a monopoly on everything, and we are not allowing it anymore. So the Rabbanut said, the chief rabbi sent a letter and said, well, if you do that, we are no longer going to convert anyone anymore, which is basically, he's saying we're stopping conversions. And you can imagine all rabbis throughout the world are like, we look to Jerusalem to help our converts who want to be recognized. So there's a huge rift that's taking place, and it's a bit of a stand down or a battle that I'm not sure which way it's going to go, but obviously it's fighting for the soul of the state of Israel. Why did I say this? Because one of the ideas here, and this is an interesting loophole, is that you can convert any kid without a big deal. You can, according to Jewish law, if a person's 14 years old, it's a whole process to convert them. If they're 12 years old or 10 years old, you just dunk them in the mikveh. Now, there are 300,000 Russian kids that you can just convert, and end of story. But that's the lenient position. The Rabbanut, the rabbi said, no, you can't do it. And that's the battle that's going on. So, okay, pretty serious.
We'll keep an eye on that one, and you'll keep us informed, Rabbi Avi.
I am here to report anything that's going on in the Holy Land.
I am once again older than you, Rabbi Avi. I did have a birthday a few days ago.
You look actually like you got older, by the way. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I might look like I got older. Soon I might, in a few more years, I might catch up to you, but I'm not sure if that's the case. But
I
yeah,
still
had
have
a
a few
nice birthday.
strands.
Had a nice birthday. I also have a few strands. If I would let it grow, I just choose not to lie to myself about it. I had a very nice birthday. Got some pizza. Got some cool presents. I got something. I got watercolors and a thing like to paint a little bit. Yeah.
Well, that is unexpected.
Yeah, unexpected. Little surprise. Relax.
You're gonna see something?
I painted a little this afternoon, as you know, a holiday here today, so I was not in the office all day. I did painted this afternoon. I found it very relaxing. It actually keeps me from looking at my phone. Not many things do that. So I feel like anything that keeps me from looking at a screen is generally healthy. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how
Setting up
that
a workshop.
What?
You're going to set up a workshop?
Like a studio? No, I just sat
Yeah.
at the dining room table with my little watercolors. Watercolors are easy. So
Fair enough.
it was, you know what it was, is when I was painting with Yulia, with my 2-year-old niece during Christmas, and I painted something. It actually came out, and everyone was like, oh my God, that's really cool. So they decided to get me watercolors. So that was a cool present.
Adorable.
Today, January 6th, our American friends in the homeland are busy thinking about last year's insurrection. So no comments. No comments there, Avi.
No comments. We know my political positions. I mean, they're pretty close to yours in this regard. So
yeah. So no, I just think that not to refight all these battles and rehash all of this. To me, what's, if you want to say, oh, I don't mind what happened, I think that it's good to try to forcibly take over the government in a coup. That's one thing. That's at least honesty. I think that where the United States is in a lot of trouble is the fact that people are walking around with this lie. In other words, the election was stolen. What happened January 6th didn't happen. We watched this. You know what I mean? We were watching this live. And I think that a society, when a good part of a society is lying to itself, forgetting about believes this, believes that, right, wrong, a good part of society or anything, an organization is lying to itself. A family is lying to itself. I think that it's rotting. It's an accelerated rot of any type of body that is not honestly looking at itself. And if a good part of the United States believes that there was an election stolen and things that January 6th didn't happen, then that's crazy talk. And we're in a lot of trouble.
What's more disconcerting is the fact that he's polling still at the top of the Republican Party. I mean, isn't that something that gives some food for thought? That is there no new leadership? Is there no one who has the courage to stand up and say?
There are a few, and they've been ostracized, and Liz Cheney and a couple others, and then they've been ostracized. So yeah, we'll see. We will see what happens, but
how's Polish politics working out for you?
Polish politics are a problem in certain many ways. But so
is anything going to change?
I don't know. There'll be elections at some point, and we'll see. There's been, I think that you have the problem in Poland is that you don't have a united opposition. Right. So it's not that the government is so wildly popular. It's just that the rest of the people that are not, that are against the government aren't united themselves. And that's this nature of government, like in Israel, right? As opposed to the United States, where it's pretty much these just, two parties, and it's hard to get past that. But there might be early elections, maybe this next 6 months or so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Abraham, let's bring in our guest, Alicja Zioło, someone who you and I know very well, who we've dealt with many, many times, who is a licensed tour guide in Krakow, has been, really one of the tour guides that we love to use, that we will cooperate with all the time. I'd say one of the sort of the go-to tour guides in Krakow. There are a few of them. She was, for over 10 years, trained to guide all over the city. Krakow is her home. It's her favorite place on earth. She dealt with a lot of English-speaking tourists, and she's come up with some interesting projects that we're going to talk to. She has a blog. She started a page called Chodź na Wycieczkę. Come on a trip, and shows different places. And we'll talk about all of that and much more with our friend and guide and co-worker, Alicja Zioło. Hello, Alicja.
Hey, hello, gentlemen.
Hi there.
It's an honor to be here. Be a
We
guest
are
of
to have
my
you.
favorite talk show.
We are excited to have you. I should say that we always like when we have guides and people on the show because they know how to express themselves very well.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. You know, it's not random.
There we go. So Alicja, let's begin. First of all, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Alicia, we're big fans of yours. And what's nice, I looked at your website, and what struck me most is that you say you're very blessed that you live in the best city in the world and you love it the most out of any place on earth. That's a
And I've been to
good
New
way
York.
for a tour guide to live.
Wait, have you been to Tel Aviv?
No, I've been to Jerusalem though.
All right, we'll discuss that after you're back.
Okay, yeah, Jerusalem.
Where are you
She's
from?
a
Are you
tour
from?
guide.
Alicia, you're from Krakow. Are you from
No.
Krakow?
I'm actually not. I'm from.
That's why you love it. You know, people who aren't, if you're from Krakow, you're a little like blasé. My wife from Krakow, and she loves Krakow, but she's like, Krakow is like, I love Krakow because I'm not from Krakow.
Well, let's say that Krakow is already a big upgrade for me.
Where are you from?
I'm from a relatively small Galician town called Dębica, around 130 kilometers east from Krakow. Sounds familiar, Rabbi?
My great grandfather, Dębica.
That's right. That's the one. So moving to Krakow was always, I always knew I wanted to live in Krakow.
So I feel, I lived after my year in Łódź. That's why I always feel like I appreciate Krakow all the more. So you came to Krakow. Did you come to Krakow for your studies?
No, I came here to high school. In my town, there are only 2 high schools, and the one that is considered to be the better one, the more prestigious one, was also very old school and weird. So it was an experiment. I just applied to, well, let's just say it, the best high school in Krakow. And
Number 5?
Yes.
Number 1 or number 5?
Number 5. Come on.
Well, we have a few people here that went to number 5, but they invited me to speak.
Really?
Number 1 invited me to speak, so I always feel like I defend number 1 because
Actually, when
number
I was
5 never invited me.
When I was a student,
8 years.
Number 5, we had a cultural exchange with Israel.
Yes, and I've spoken there several times. Yes.
Oh.
And number 5 always reminds me that they are the best high school in Krakow. It's
4th in Poland.
So wait, how
Wow.
does that? How did you lived in Krakow?
Yeah, I moved to Krakow when I was living here. I left home, and I was living here at first with my grandmother, and later by myself.
Your grandmother.
Big social
So you got
experiment.
grandmother.
My
You
parents
lived with your
decided-
grandma during high school. You got to do whatever you wanted, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Nice. And what did you study? So what did you study? What did you study after high school?
I'm a graduate. I'm a master of applied psychology.
Very good for guiding.
That happens. You know,
Yeah,
I
it is.
chose it when I was 19. When you're 19, you shouldn't be allowed to make any decisions for yourself, including your haircut. So, I didn't know what to do. So I figured that psychology is sort of like making high school longer because it's quite general. You have you can specialize in so many different things. So I didn't really have any better idea than that.
In America, when we don't know what to study, we study political science.
Well, I guess here it's the same. Psychology is quite difficult to get to, but I mean, it happens. So. But when I was a freshman, I started training for the tour guides, and I always kind of
Already as a friend, I was going to ask you, how did that happen? What was the idea, the genesis of the idea of going? How did you get interested in guiding?
Well, I was at the university. I was a freshman, and it was really hard because it was the Jagiellonian University, and psychology wasn't easy. The freshman year is quite challenging, and I was very unhappy. I knew I didn't like it. I knew I would get terrible. I would make a terrible psychologist. So I was completely
You're not crazy enough.
Excuse me?
You're not crazy enough. All the psychologists I know are out of their mind.
Well, I don't know about that. But yeah, I was really lost and frustrated and working as a waitress and watching Friends over and over again. And my father was like, well, you're clearly unhappy. So you don't know what you want to do with your life. So how about you go to work? Maybe it will give you some kind of idea about what you want, or at least what you don't want to do. And he said, okay, you speak English, and we've traveled a lot always. So how about you think about that? Check what you have to do to become a tour guide in Krakow. It was a time of a big peak in tourist interest, so it felt like a good idea. So I checked it, and apparently, I mean, back then I learned that to become a tour guide, you needed to go through 1-year course of history and history of art, and take a state exam, 3 parts, oral, written oral, and then practical. And so I did all that, and it worked. And I never wanted to do anything else than that.
You love guiding.
I do.
What makes a good tour guide?
I have no idea. I have no idea what makes a good tour guide. For me, it's my entire life. It's not only my job. It's my hobby. It's everything. That's why.
Passion.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, and that's why the pandemic was so difficult to so many of us. Because for many tour guides, this is not just a way of making a living. It's much more than that.
So what part of it, if it's such a passion for you, what is it that you enjoy so much?
I love meeting people. I'm a, energy vampire. I need it. And during the lockdown, it was very difficult for me not to meet people. That's one of the reasons why I started to do stuff online, because it was a little bit like that, having interaction with someone. So that's one thing. Another thing is that I really like exploring, not only Krakow, but generally. I like being a tourist myself. So
You're a curiosity, I would say, right?
Yeah.
A tour guide should be curious.
Yeah, definitely. Tour guide should have hunger. Should be. I think good tour guide is always looking for more, because being a tour guide doing old town tour, Jewish tour, old town tour, Jewish tour, Schindler's Factory, Schindler's Factory, Schindler's Factory. That's not a way of having a good life as a tour guide. So yeah, I always wanted more.
And there's always more to uncover in Krakow.
Yeah, that city has never stopped surprising me, and I always thought that I knew it pretty well after the course, and I was always reading a lot, but there's always something that surprises me, always. So much more to discover. So yeah.
I remember when I came to Krakow, it was 8 years ago, I think, and we were walking around the Rynek, and someone said it. There was a sign maybe, or someone said it, and I walked down the stairs. And I couldn't believe it. It was old Krakow was underneath the Rynek, and there's this museum there, and it really gives you that impression of, wait a second, you think you know what's happening here, but right 1 floor below is 400 years ago, or whatever it was.
Yeah, there is more than, I mean, first of all, there is more than you can see from the streets. So, for example, I mean, now that the pandemic changed everything for me, and now I'm guiding mostly local people around Krakow. So it has to be more advanced than with tourists coming from other cities or from abroad. And I'm always in process of designing new tour, always. And my bestseller, December's bestseller, was the tour about the courtyards. Because the courtyards, actually the Krużganki, the arcade courtyards, the specific type of the courtyards, famous, especially, I mean, popular, especially in the 16th century, 17th century. The rest.
And is that only in the old town, or also in the Kazimierz?
Well, every tour has to have a meeting point and the ending point. So in this particular case, I decided to focus on the old town. Mm-hmm. This is where the most beautiful examples are. So you walk down the street and the buildings are pretty, but if you don't know where to look, you have no idea. If you just walk inside, if you cross the entrance, you can find other things, also very beautiful places. So yeah, Krakow has never stopped surprising me. And also above that, there are all those stories, right? Because places is one thing, and then you also have stories, and there is more than meet the eye, and that's, I love it.
What do you like touring more about, the Jewish Krakow or non-Jewish Krakow?
Well, before the pandemic, it sort of happened naturally. But guiding and talking about the Jewish heritage was my specialty. I mean, that's how we met, right? 3 of us. But now it's changed. I want to have a lot of tours, different specialties, different themes. So I guide less around the Jewish district than I used to. But definitely the Jewish heritage is something that I'm interested in. But now that I'm guiding local people, I try to keep it more diverse, let's say.
And how did you get interested in Jewish heritage growing up or at all, or only coming to Krakow?
Well, I grew up in a town where at some point of time before the First World War and before the Cossacks got here, the Jews were over 40% of the population. And, being raised in the 1990s, the words connected with the Jewish culture were part of our vocabulary, but not in the way that you may think, probably, because I'm part of the generation of the Kurdish kids raised after the transformation, but sort of before caring for Jewish heritage became a thing, right? I mean, given that it's a thing now, I think it is, but back then it wasn't. So I'm a kid that played hide and seek on the Jewish cemetery. And well, it wasn't my neighborhood, but I was going there to visit my friends from school. And I don't know, my mom knew, but my friends were like, Mom, I'm going to play hide and seek at the cemetery. And the mom would say, sure, just be back before dinner or something like that. Yeah, so in my childhood, the Jewish cemetery was not really, there was no fence around it. And when you think about it, tall grass and stones spread all over, it's a perfect place for hide and seek. So yeah, and yeah, there is a synagogue in my hometown until today. But we would say, okay, well, our toaster is broken. We have to go to the synagogue to buy a new one, because in my childhood, it was an electronics store. So yeah, when I was 12, I had very good grades, and my father decided to reward me by buying me a boombox, and I got it in a synagogue. So that's my first encounter. That's the first time I went to a synagogue.
Boombox.
Yeah.
You're aging, you're dating yourself. So it's fair to say that you were aware of Poland's Jewish heritage, but you didn't get, because I asked not only because of your guiding, that, obviously being a guide, you have to be familiar with Jewish Krakow and Kazimierz and know the stories and be a little bit into it. And obviously you're, connected to our community in many ways, but you obviously there's I feel from you more of an interest, more than just the interest of a guide, because of the work that you've done in terms of naming, recognizing people, Jews from Krakow's past, and working with the city on that. So where, I want a two-part question, where does that come from really? Is it you just a Pole who feels that you have to help right a historical wrong and do the right thing for these people there aren't that many of us around to do it ourselves, and that's one thing, or is it something else? And then also let's talk a little bit about those projects, which are really cool.
Well, so as I said, I was always aware of the fact that the Jews used to be here, right? Because we were using these words and they were weird, right? Bożnica, Kirkut. And my parents, they're very open, and we always traveled a lot, and they always wanted me to learn stuff, and they were never hiding anything from me. We were very open about everything. So the cultural diversity was something very obvious in my home. So I knew that the Jews were there, but I never knew what was the scale of that. I never knew the details until the training for the tour guides, because Jewish heritage is part of that. And actually my exam, when I had my exam that I passed, it was in the Jewish district. So this is when I started to dig deeper, right? Because I needed to know all that for the exam. And then when I started guiding, I was employed by a company that had two basic products: Old Town Tour, Jewish Tour. So I needed to do that, and I was so stressed because I knew that the Jews could be my tourists.
Yeah.
So I knew so little. How can I guide Jews around the Jewish district if I know nothing? So my defensive mechanism is reading. So it's like really reading a lot. And there was my boss there, Gosia, who was she was a graduate of the Jewish studies, and she was sort of my mentor. She was, whenever someone asked me a question and I answered that question and I wasn't sure whether the answer was okay, I was calling her saying, look, I had a question like that and I answered like this. Do you think this is the right answer? Would you say something like that? So she trained me in a way. And then at some point she recommended me to work for the Galicia Jewish Museum. And this is when I was like, okay, I'm ready. And then I met with you guys, and then the more Jewish tourists you meet and the more stories you learn, the more you know, and it all, you get more puzzles to the big picture. But yeah, so that's the work. But when you asked me about the special projects, my special projects, for me,
Start with, I mean, maybe the street naming.
yeah, but what I wanted to say is that for my generation, I don't know if it still works like that way, but I think it does. For generation of the Poles raised in Poland post 1989, for us, Jewish heritage has this Indiana Jones kind of aspect. I don't know if you know what I mean. So you live in this town, you know this place your entire life, and then you discover that there's a cemetery somewhere in the bushes. I mean, like, really? You go there and you find some tombstones with like weird alphabet. What the hell is that? It makes you feel a little bit like, you're Indiana Jones. So although now after my several projects done with the cemetery, now it's more like Tomb Raider, but yes, it has this kind of aspect, and it's thrilling. It's very I love that, exploring new things. And it wasn't until not so long ago when I started feeling like, okay, well, exploring for myself, it's fine, but it can't end with me. There has to be more. So the projects about the streets were really part of that. First Streets, this is something that I did when I was still employed by the Vocative guiding company, doing the tourist stuff, right? But the tour guides there were always more, how to say that? The social responsibility of tour guides was always, we were more aware of what kind of responsibility
By talking about things and showing people things, especially considering the tragic history of the Jews, that you have a certain responsibility not only to educate people and to earn, a living from it, but to give back a little bit to that community, I guess.
That's one thing. You know something, and it's so important that you want as many people as possible to know. That's one thing. And another thing, for most of the tourist tour guide is the only Polish person they need. So the way you talk, the way you are, will leave them with a certain impression. So it's a huge responsibility when you think about it.
Very much so.
So we started to discuss some. I mean, there were always some things that I wanted to do, and one thing that was bugging me was the orphanage in the ghetto in Krakow. The orphanage that was liquidated in 1942 in a very brutal way. Of course, back then I didn't know as much about the liquidation as I do now, but I felt very strongly about it because there was nothing left of the building. And one thing they teach tour guides is that you can't talk about something that you can't see. It's one of the big mistakes that the tour guide can make, right? You don't talk about something that your group can't see. So how do you find an excuse to talk about a story like this, the kids in the orphanage, if there's no orphanage, right? To make it easier for people. So back then the company had 10th anniversary. So we were raising money, and thanks to that, we managed to put a plaque in a place where the orphanage used to be. And I was very happy that you were both there, because our team back then, we were most of us were Polish Catholics. So cooperating with you guys, consulting with you guys was very important to us. But again, we felt like it wasn't enough. We wanted more. So we wrote a petition, and we filed a motion to the town hall to name one of the streets in Krakow after David Kurtzman, the caretaker of the orphanage in the ghetto in Krakow, who, given a choice to stay in the ghetto during the liquidation of the orphanage, he decided to go with the kids to the train He was killed just like they were killed in the death camp in Belgrade. So we did that, and there is a street like that. It's very small.
We've had his family here multiple times. Avi,
Yeah,
no?
yes. We
Yeah.
actually, this is how I met them. I don't know if you've heard that story, how I met Marcel Kurtzman, the grandson of David Kurtzman.
Yeah.
It was completely random, and it was thanks to you, actually, thanks to your sofa next to the reception. Do you know that story, Jonathan? No?
Tell us the story.
So the story was that I was on my maternity leave, and I was so bored at home. I just couldn't stand that. I could feel my brain cells dying. So I decided to go on a tour, because why not? Life-work balance is way overrated. So I decided to join Anya Barua. I saw her here before. I don't know if she's still here, but I always thought she was a great tour guide. That's one thing. And I know that she knows a lot about the Jewish district. So I was like, okay, so let's go on a tour. Let's listen to Anya. Maybe she'll be an inspiration for me. Maybe I'll change something about my tour in the Jewish district. So I was walking with them, and then we got to the GCC, because this is where Anya always goes, and I do as well. And this is when my baby in a stroller started crying, because of course I had to take her with me. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go inside, I'm gonna breastfeed her, and then I'm gonna catch up. So I went inside and I sat on your orange sofa, breastfeeding my daughter. And this is when I overheard a guy coming to your reception saying, "Hi, I'm here to reserve dinner, kosher Shabbat dinner for Kurtzman." And I was like, still breastfeeding, half naked. Kurtzman? Martin Kurtzman. And I was like, still breastfeeding. Excuse me. Are you talking about Marcel Kurtzman, is he related in some way to David Kurtzman? And the guy was like, yeah, sure, he's a grandson. I was like, really? He's in Krakow? Yeah, he is. He's just around the corner. He was actually having falafel in Isaac Synagogue. So yeah, well, can I go and meet him? Sure. It's like, dress up. And started running with the stroller. And that's how I met, Mr. Marcel Kurtzman and his wife.
Good story.
Yeah.
It all happens at the JCC, Jonathan.
Yeah, things like that happen.
There you go. I like these are the stories that we like. No, but it's interesting that you need places, forgetting about, I think that one of the important functions that we fill is that this sort of a place you start to understand when you're involved in a community center and all this, that there's planned and programs and all this, but so much of it is just to create an environment where people can connect with each other, and that sofa and the reception and things like this is
section where a lot of roots meet.
Yeah.
And that's very important. Yes. So with Kurtzman Street, we really wanted it to be a place where people actually live. I had this idea, I was obsessed with that I didn't want it to be a fake street, like a street that has no address. I wanted it to be a place where people actually live, because I had this idea, and I hope it's going to work like that someday, that there'll be people living there, and they will be filling the papers, like, I don't know, applying for something, and they will have to write Kurtzman Street 1, right? The place where they live. And the kids will be living there, and they will be giving assignment at school. Explain what is the name of your street, where is the name of your street coming from? And they will have to look up, they will have to Google that name. And that's something that I really wanted. So that street is small, and it's very far from the center, but I had a completely different idea about it. With the second street that I managed to make happen, the location was much more important to me. So that's the Orphanage Street. That's my one of the highlights of 2021.
So Orvid, we can talk a little bit about that, because Maria Orvid was somebody who is a very important figure in Krakow, was a survivor, and was somebody who was a psychiatrist, and was instrumental, really, and I think became like a very important international figure of dealing with trauma from the Holocaust. And I was lucky enough to know her. She was somebody who was very active part of the community when I was here, and still right as the JCC was opening. And I remember, being friendly with her, and she was a strong, really cool woman who'd seen a lot and done a lot. And sorry. She was cool.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I never met her.
Oh, you never, Professor Orvit, she was amazing.
Yeah, well, I first heard about her when I was studying psychology, because she is really considered to be the one who was the first specialist who described the symptoms of the PTSD. She never named it that way.
Yeah.
She was dealing with she used to call it the post-camp trauma, right? So she was doing psychotherapy and talking to survivors of camps, mostly Holocaust survivors, but as far as I know, not only, also Polish Catholics that went to camps. And she could see the impact that kind of experience had on the life later on, years after the war. And she had an amazing mentor who, Antoni Kempinski, a psychiatrist, who actually, he handpicked her. I don't know if you know that story. She was studying medicine and she had some psychiatry class, and he chose her. He was like, do the psychiatry, specialize in psychiatry. We can do good things together. So she did. She was one of the first female psychiatrists in Poland. And so she described the symptoms of the PTSD, the flashbacks, the troubles with sleeping, all the symptoms that the Holocaust survivors were struggling with. And her mentor was right. I mean, he said, they're never going to trust anyone but you, because you are a Holocaust survivor. And if you don't take care of them, no one will, because they will not let anyone else close enough, right?
She's really a legendary figure in our community.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. She was also the first psychiatrist in Poland who talked about separating psychiatry for children and youth, adolescents, from the psychiatry for adults, because until 1960s, 70s, kids and adults that had mental issues were in the same institutions, which is, when you think about it, it's crazy. So she was the one who made it happen. The psychiatry clinic for children and youth in Krakow was founded by her, and she was the leader of that institution. So he retired.
Well worthy of a street.
Oh yeah. So that story actually originated from a tour about women of Krakow. I have that tour every year, and I have it for International Women's Day. And last year I couldn't do it because of the lockdown. So I figured I would do it online. And I was looking for some kind of theme. And I thought it would be a good idea to have a tour about women in Krakow that have a monument. Because, you know, my husband's a drone operator, so he would film it, and it would be, you know, really good, nice to watch. But I discovered that it wouldn't be a very long tour because there are not too many women having monuments in Krakow. So then I thought, okay, if not monuments, how about we have streets? And I imagined these recordings of a drone flying over a big avenue. That could look good, right? But then again, it wouldn't be a very long tour, because now I know it. Back then, it was just my intuition. But right now I know that in Krakow, only 10% of all the streets are named after women.
I'm surprised it's that much.
Yeah, but it includes all the fictional characters.
Wait, is that also like all the saints and everything?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, all right. So that's yeah.
So I was like, eventually I had a tour titled Women of Krakow Without a Monument. So it was my personal selection of women that should have a monument, and they don't. Go. But then I was like, okay, so a tour, but that's not enough. And I decided that that's something that I hope I will be able to continue. I decided every year for the International Women's Day, I'm gonna file one application to the town hall, asking to have one of the streets in Krakow named after a woman of my choice. That I
like it.
Worthy.
Maybe we should find a space, and we should make a like a garden, a courtyard, and put up monuments to all these Krakow women who don't have monuments.
There is an initiative like this. Nina Gabryś, the presidential liaison of President of Krakow for the equal treatment This is how you say it in English? Równe traktowanie?
Yeah.
This is how would you? I don't know. So she has a project like that.
There's that. I'm surprised that's a job.
Yeah, there is a very creative and very effective lady working on a position like that.
I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, so so I filed, and the first one that I thought about was Maria Orvik, because she was always part of my offline tour. I always ended my offline. I was starting. I always do. I always start my offline tour about women of Krakow, Stara Szenirer, and I ended with Maria Orvik. So yeah. So
I'm gonna throw. Do you know? I think that Miriam Akavia. Do you know Miriam Akavia?
Yes, I do.
She was lovely and a wonderful, wonderful, amazing woman.
But you know what's my problem? She's not on the way.
But she's from Krakow.
I know, but you know, I have there's a route, right? And you can't walk too far. So yeah, Miriam, I actually read a book of Miriam Arkavia last month, and I was really really happy with the way that she described the pre-war Jewish life in Krakow. I haven't read anything so vivid before.
She's amazing. She was amazing. She was amazing. I got to know her a little bit. You know, there are some positive aspects of living in Krakow for 20 years is getting to know these people that are unfortunately no longer with us. But enough of these positive things. Let's talk. Where are the most annoying people from? Which country are the worst tourists from?
I saw that.
Besides Israel probably its own category. So we're going to give Israel a separate.
No, I don't think it's about a nationality. It's about a specific group. And I saw that question. I saw it on Facebook. I knew you were going to ask that question. And I started to think about three groups.
Don't be diplomatic.
Not annoying.
I'm not going to accept a diplomatic answer.
No. The most challenging groups in my life of a tour guide that is over 10 years long.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rank them because I don't know which one was most challenging.
Okay.
But number one, the World Youth Day. So the biggest gathering of Catholics from all around the world that took place in Krakow in 2016.
Yeah.
And I was a guide and tour leader of 76 Catholics from Florida. That was tough. And well, majority of them was not really young. So that was
So what the challenge was, the Florida aspect, the age aspect, or the Catholic aspect?
The papal aspect was the most difficult because Pope was here, and because of that all the security measures were like crazy, and putting it all together was really, really challenging. So that's number one. It was a big group, and it was a big confusion and big chaos in Krakow and all that. So that's number one.
Everyone left Krakow. We were here. That was fun.
I was here. I was here.
I was too. Which country?
I will not choose a country. Out of these three, two are American. Three that I wanted to name, two were American, but it's, as I said, it's not about nationality, it's about a group. So number two is a group of Hasidic pilgrims from Brooklyn.
Hasidic pilgrims from Brooklyn. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, that was tough. They were testing.
What was so tough about it? They didn't like the fact that you said Jewish stuff and you're not Jewish? They wouldn't listen to a woman?
I think they didn't know they were meeting a woman, and I didn't know I was meeting a religious group. So we couldn't find ourselves at the very beginning of the meeting point. And when we finally did, they were surprised. I was surprised. You know, the initial confusion was it wasn't a good start. So then they started asking questions, and they were just trying to prove me wrong, and it lasted for 2 hours.
Oh my God!
So they were asking questions
about what?
You know, they kept asking questions about all these legends, about all these rabbis, and I knew that they knew all that. They knew all these stories. They just wanted to check if I did. And it was really challenging. Plus, it was Friday afternoon, so they already started celebration, and they were drinking on the street, and it's forbidden in Poland. So I was so stressed that someone, I really didn't want to be in the middle of the situation in which I have to explain to a policeman what is happening. I didn't want it to become some kind of diplomatic incident. So I was really stressed about that. But they keep coming every year, and they keep calling me.
There you go.
Yeah.
What was the third group?
It was very challenging, but yeah. And the third group was a bunch of people from all around the world that were specialists in cybersecurity that I was supposed to guide around the exhibition about Polish coders, and there was an enigma there. So I needed to, first of all, get what the enigma was actually doing, the machine, the coding machine, and then explain it to people in English, people that probably knew better what enigma was doing than me. That was the third group.
Doesn't sound that terrible. Well, I think
Yeah.
now the question: when you go somewhere abroad these days, do you hire a guide?
Yeah, I try to do guided tours, and sometimes I'm very happy with it, and sometimes I'm really angry with it. So yeah, like in Lower East Side Tenement Museum, I was so angry. It's an amazing museum.
I think it closed.
Really? Why?
Yeah. I feel like I read that it closed.
It was one of the highlights of my visit in New York City.
COVID. I think it closed.
No.
Yeah, that was a good place. On what
Yeah,
is it, Rivington Street or something?
It was really good, but the problem was that the lady there, I don't know if you're familiar with
Okay, I
it.
might have invented that. It's not closed.
Oh, thank God, because it's one of the best museums that I went to. Well, anyway, they have this different sort of like apartments, and each
Yeah.
apartment is telling a different story.
Right.
So I chose the sweatshop, the sweatshop one.
Yeah.
And I was really excited about it because it was about a Jewish family that immigrated to Manhattan from Europe. And it was really enlightening for me because I kind of followed these people to the moment they entered the ship. And then they went to America, right? And they disappeared from here. So they're not really my business anymore, right? Because I focus on Krakow. But over there, I could see what their life was like after they got there, right? So it was really awesome. But the lady kept, she kept telling me that the family was from Russia. And I was like, so, okay, but we're from Russia. But we're from in Russia. It's more complicated than that. It was late 19th century, where they were from, Russia. And then there were some papers at the exhibition, and I found out they were actually, Polish Jews that were living in the Russian partition. And she had no idea about such a thing. So I was like, really?
Shocking. Americans.
Well.
Alicia, are you on Team Latka or Team Hamantash?
Oh, Latka. Of course, Latka. Come on.
What? It's not everybody is Latka. Almost everybody is Latka, but not everybody is Latka.
But my husband thinks it's really weird that I eat it with cream.
Sour cream?
Yeah.
That's a normal thing.
Perfectly normal.
It's normal in Dębica, that's for sure.
It's normal in Krakow. No?
Listen, it's not applesauce, but still.
In America, it's not normal.
Yeah, in my hometown, they do it with sour cream and sugar. So that's something my husband.
I like it with the mushroom sauce.
I do as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Mushroom sauce is good. Very good. And Alicja Zioło, very important final question.
Huh?
What are your 3 favorite films of all time?
Films. I'm not a very film person. But how about we do the books? Can we do books? I don't watch
Yes,
movies.
you can do books. I will make an exception. I hope no one else that's ever a guest is watching, because no, but all right, books.
Books. Number 1 is actually my new discovery, Professor's Favorite Equation. It's a Japanese book, and I would never think that I would like a Japanese book, but yeah, it was awesome. And number 2 is Noah's Child. Are you familiar with that one? You should be familiar with that one. Do you know Noah's Child? No? It's a book by, I think he's Swiss. Eric Emanuel Schmidt? No? No? No.
Does my reaction seem to be telling you that I'm familiar
Because
with it?
it's actually a book that it's sort of like my confession of faith in a way. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's a very short book. It's a very short story, but it's about guess what? It's about an orphanage, Catholic orphanage during the Second World War that is hiding a Jewish boy. And it's generally the story about this boy hiding in the I think it's based on a real story. And there's this priest there who knows that he has a Jewish kid in the group. And he's trying to make it all work. So it's a short story about that. But that's not what's the most important part for me. The bottom line is that that priest has like a secret room in his monastery orphanage. And in that room during the war, he was hiding Jewish stuff, right? Like Torah scrolls and all that. And then in the end of the book, the boy is coming back to visit the priest, right? He's an adult, he lives in Israel and so on, but he keeps coming back to visit the man who helped to save his life during the war, right? And each time he's entering that room, there is a different set of things there. Because the priest has different collections. So the bottom line is that what he was interested in was not Jews in particular. He just wanted to save something that was about to extinct. So during the war, it was Jewish heritage, but later on it was Native American. It was all the minorities that were on the edge of extinction. He was saving them. Whenever he watched the news and he saw something happening that he was not okay with, he would say, "Okay, I'm starting a new collection." So I mean, that's it, and that's something that also I think it's a big motivation for a lot of people. You know, saving something
could be a good. It sounds like yeah, I understand.
It's a very short book, so it should be.
Sounds fascinating.
I'll put it on the list. And your third book?
Oh God, third book?
I ask movies because movies people have heard of the movies.
I don't watch movies at all.
They can relate. Do you watch TV?
I do. So I can do TV.
So then let's back up and quickly tell us your 3 favorite TV shows of all time.
Friends. That's number 1. Really? Good Wife. That's number 2. Watch Good Wife?
No.
No? It's all
I'm going to tell you what I think about Friends in a minute, but go ahead.
And third is How I Met Your Mother.
How I Met Your Mother, I like very much.
So now
I like How I Met Your Mother.
2 out of 3 are based in New York. So
I have to tell you that Friends, I never understood. One of the great mysteries to me is living in Krakow. One of the great mysteries to me is how people like that ice cream on Starovishna. But one of the great larger mysteries to me in the world is why so many people that I think are pretty bright people really like Friends. To me, Friends is nothing different than 1,000 other shows. It never distinguished
You don't understand. Itself. It was one of the first American shows that I could watch.
All right, so if it was an
there's a sentimentality.
And it's
aspect. But as a show, I never thought it was that
I was
clever.
When you invited me over for Hanukkah Shabbat dinner, it was a couple of years ago, and I was really excited because it was my first Shabbat dinner in my life. So I was like really, really excited. I kept waiting on someone saying, years and years ago, there were these people called the Maccabees, which was one of the episodes of Friends. So it was also one of the encounters with the Jewish culture I had. You remember the Holiday Armadillo?
No, I've only seen a few episodes and I can never get into it. I don't think it's a bad show. I don't watch it and think it's terrible. I just think it's nothing special. It's like if somebody's favorite ice cream flavor is vanilla, you're like, really, vanilla? It's just kind of like, Avi, what's your idea about Friends?
I did watch it at the time. I guess it was part of the culture of the 90s and the must-see, but now looking back at it, it's hard to get through an episode. I find it.
But we're Seinfeld guys.
We're major Seinfeld guys.
Seinfeld.
No question about that.
All about Seinfeld.
Timeless.
I continue to watch them. Alicja Zioło, always a pleasure. Thank you for
Thank you
taking
so
the
much,
time.
Alicia. Pleasure to
Thank you
talk
for all
to you.
that thank you for all that you do to make Krakow more known in the world and a more, show people the beauty of the city that I also love.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No, I was so
Well-
happy that you invited me here. It was
Maybe we'll have you back. Maybe we'll do a book
something to
show.
look forward to.
There you go. Take care, Alicia. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.